Good evening. We come to you tonight with heavy hearts. We are mourning with the families that lost a loved one last night in a tragic crash. A father and his young son, they were killed, as were several members of the University of the Southwest men's and women's golf teams. Tonight, we will walk you through the investigation and where it stands tonight, and looking ahead to how West Texans are coming together to mourn and remember the 9 lives lost. This is NewsWest 9 at 10. Thanks for joining us.
I reported a vehicle fire at West 115 and 1788, West 115, correction, East 115 and 1788. It is going to be a head-on collision, both vehicles fully engulfed at this time. The bystanders attempted to get the person trapped in the van out. They're unable to get close to the van at this time. It is too hot.
We're going to probably have to shut the highway down for a while. We are going to need 2 helicopters, please.
Thanks for staying up late with us. I'm Tatum Gwen. We have a lot to talk about tonight. Let's bring you up to speed. Those first calls, they came in after 8 last night. 2 cars were on fire. That was the report. A van crash had just happened outside of Andrews. Tonight, we know 9 people were killed in that crash. The youngest victim just 13 years old. Troopers, they were out on the scene investigating for more than 12 hours. And we understand because of the nature of this crash, the National Transportation Safety Board have been called in. Here is video from this morning. The question tonight, and one investigators are still working through themselves. What went wrong? The initial crash report from DPS states the Dodge pickup truck veered into the northbound lane, hitting the university van head on. The NTSB said earlier today that it will be some time before we know exactly what happened.
We hope to have a preliminary report which will just contain the facts of the gathered up to that point in about 2 weeks to a month. The entire investigation could take anywhere from 18 to 24 months. And, you know, it's not only looking at what happened, but why it happened and ways that can prevent it from happening in the future.
Earlier today, both the cars that were pulled out of a ditch and then towed away, the truck, the van, the area surrounding the crash, all charred by fire. Not much left. And wreckage, it's still scattered across the road. So why is the NTSB investigating this crash? They say that the severity of the collision is what caught their attention.
We look at every civil aviation accident in the country, as well as significant crashes and accidents in other modes of transportation, such as marine, pipeline, railroad, and highway.
So if you have ever driven down the old telephone pole road, as we call it, you may have had some close calls yourself. There's been a lot of crashes along that over the years. It's pretty narrow and just 2 lanes. And there is a lot of traffic there, many driving pretty fast. We are asking the question tonight, is the road safe enough or can more be done? Jonathan Polasek spoke with the president of the Midland-Odessa Transportation Alliance for some insight. Jonathan, what did you find out?
Tatum, James Beecham is the president of the Transportation Alliance here. He first and foremost wants to offer his sincerest condolences to all of the victims. But when it comes to safety of Old Telephone Pole Road, any improvement will take some time. 1788, it's well traveled for such an isolated road, and drivers don't always take it easy on the gas. The Midland-Odessa Transportation Alliance studies many roads across the Permian Basin just like this. When it comes to improvements, that can take some time. The Alliance looks at many factors several times a year, using 3 to 5 years worth of data to make decisions on what will make the greatest impact for drivers, including traffic cams, overall crash fatalities, and types of crashes.
Generally, on a 2-lane rural road like that, the most significant improvement you can have is fully developed out 8-foot, 10-foot shoulders, and rumble strips, because the majority of crashes and fatalities on roadways like that tend to be roadway departures.
Widening lanes is another alternative, but not in all cases. Two-lane roads like Telephone Pole Road are part of life here in West Texas, so all of them have to be monitored for safety, especially as more and more drivers start getting back to work and using the road.
For the last couple of years, people have let their guard down a little bit, and it's as important as ever that they are vigilant when they're out there on the roads and highways.
Now, this road will be getting a closer look, but changes will never guarantee how safe two-lane roads like Telephone Pole Road can be. But any changes would be welcomed for weary drivers if it means saving lives. Now, one thing that could be helpful to know is that 385 is actually a 4-lane highway that also goes to Seminole and Andrews, just like 1788 does. It might take you a few extra minutes, but if you're looking for more lanes when you're traveling, that could be a route that you want to take. Tatum?
Jonathan, thank you. Tonight we are learning more about the 9 people involved in the crash, including those who are part of the University of the Southwest. Tragically, all of those from the university, all under the age of 30, they lost their lives. It's hard to wrap your mind around, right? We've been piecing together information over the past 24 hours. Here's what DPS released earlier this afternoon. We know that their coach, Tyler James, Mauricio Sanchez, Travis Garcia, and Jackson Zinn, they all passed away in the crash. 3 more victims, they lost their lives that were on the golf team. We have them here. That includes Carissa Rain, she was 21, Lacey Stone, she was a freshman, just 18 years old, and Tiago Souza, also 18-year-old himself. Now, we can't forget about the 2 other victims in the crash. The 2 other survivors, the only 2 to survive. They were also members of the golf team. Dayton Price, he's 19, and Hayden Underhill, 20. They were airlifted to a Lubbock hospital where they are in critical condition tonight. They were the only people that were able to be pulled from the crash before the flames got too big and the scene was too hot. We also cannot forget the victims in the other vehicle, a Dodge truck. Heinrich Simons and his 13-year-old son. They too were killed. They were from Seminole. We are working with their family to learn more about them and get any photos that we might be able to share with you so y'all can remember them with us. Now, the golf course, where all of those golfers on that bus practice, had a memorial set up for them. The Rockwind Golf Course in Hobbs, which is right across the road from the University of the Southwest, put together a makeshift memorial. The golfers, they spent almost every day at that course, so the staff, they knew them all very well. They put up that memorial this morning after they heard what happened. Employees at the course, like many of us, are still in shock.
There's definitely a hole there, and it's hard. It's like I said today. I just can't even wrap my mind around it yet. I don't think any of us can.
How can you? The golf course, they do plan to do more for the victims and their families in the future. Right now, they're just trying to come to terms with the faces that they see almost every day won't be there anymore. Other reactions to the crash are also coming in from around the state, including from our Governor Greg Abbott. He expressed his condolences and asked the state to come together in support of them and their families and friends. Governor Abbott also pledged his support and the support of the Texas DPS to the university and also New Mexico. His thoughts, he says, are with the 2 members of the team in critical condition in Lubbock tonight. Hayden Underhill and Dayton Price will say their names again. Another group showing their support, Midland College. They showing support in Hobbs. Midland College President Dr. Steve Thomas has ordered the Midland College flag to fly at half-staff. That show of support started today and will continue through Friday, all to honor the memories of Coach Tyler James and his team and the other 2 people. Now, in a statement, Dr. Thomas extends condolences to the USW family and acknowledges the devastating loss to the school. He said, quote, "Words cannot express how deeply hurt we feel for their loss." He goes on to say, quote, "Our thoughts and prayers are with USW as they grieve this terrible loss." And Midland College was not the only local school showing support. Corey Mose has more on our region's outreach. Hi, Corey.
Hello, Tatum. That's right. We had people across the country showing support on social media for the lives that were lost. Closer to home, Odessa College's golf team placed ribbons on their bags to honor USW. UTPB also showed their condolences for the tragic accident. And then two-time Olympic medalist and Houston native Kat Osterman posted her thoughts and prayers, while three-time MVP award winner Mike Trout also shared his emotions from California. And bringing it back to the 432, Midland College decided to cancel the remainder of the tournament. But after clearing out the course, they decided to leave up the scoreboard. Except only one team's scores were written. It was the Mustangs.
You know, I think I hugged everybody on everybody's team that was here, and a lot of teary eyes, a lot of sad faces, a lot of young kids that had played with them yesterday or played with them at other events around the area recently, and we've played with the University of Southwest quite a few times in the last few years. And Tyler was a good friend of mine, actually. I'd met him and got to know him a little bit there and have known him ever since, and he just got this job at University of Southwest this year, and I think he was doing a really good job, and a great kid, and working hard, and was trying to build a program, and had a lot of respect for him. Good kid.
So as you see, Coach Tyler was well respected among the coaching ranks, and he was known for sharing the gospel of Jesus Christ while on the golf course.
He was able to pour into the lives of our student athletes and how they interacted in the classroom, in the community, but also spiritually. And he used golf as a form of ministry, and he ministered to our student athletes when he was coaching them and interacting with them.
And now Coach and his team is spending eternity with their Lord and Savior. Tatum.
An alleged cover-up of a sexual hazing incident at Midland Christian. 5 faculty members, including the superintendent of schools and athletic director, arrested, all escorted off campus in handcuffs this morning. That's our top story. We'll get to it in a moment, but first, hey, we got to talk about the weather. Anthony, severe thunderstorm warnings have been issued for parts of the area. I see lightning out to the west.
Yeah, there's quite a bit of lightning out there, Tatum. We haven't seen thunderstorms like this in quite some time, but we're getting closer to severe weather season, and new severe thunderstorm warnings have been issued for a large portion of the central Permian Basin.
Anthony, thanks. Back to tonight's top story. I'll tell you what, no matter what way you cut it, it's a hard story to tell, and there are a lot of people hurting tonight. How do you reconcile this? How do you move forward? There is school tomorrow at Midland Christian. The message to parents tonight is coming from the school board president. In addition to cooperating with police, Jason Stockstill says that in part, the physical, spiritual, and emotional safety of our students is the most important responsibility that they bear. As educators, they say they appreciate the support and the prayers. So what happened? Court documents state a freshman baseball player was sexually assaulted with a baseball bat by a sophomore teammate last month. Key coaches and administrators knew about it and did not report it as required by state law. We'll walk you through all of that in a moment. But first, here's a look at who's involved. We've got Superintendent Jared Lee, Athletic Director Greg McClendon, Assistant Principal and Coach Matt Counts, Head Baseball Coach Barry Russell, and High School Principal Dana Ellis. Each have been charged with failure to report neglect or abuse. Tonight, jail records indicate that all of those faculty members have left the Midland County Jail on a personal recognizance bond. What is that? Well, it means all they had to do was give their word that they will show up for a future court date. These are usually granted to people with clean records and longtime community residents. Now let's take you through the timeline of events. There's a lot of information to this story. It all starts on the week of January 17th through the 21st. That is when the alleged assault happened in the locker room at Christensen Stadium. That's where the baseball team plays and practices. On January 20th, secondary school principal Dana Ellis is notified of the assault. The next day, Ellis notifies Superintendent Jared Lee, who then directs Athletic Director Greg McClendon and Coach Matt Counts to conduct an internal investigation. Police then get word of the assault on January 28th. An investigator makes contact with Superintendent Lee, who acknowledged school administrators were looking into the matter. That brings us to the end of last week, February 11th. A detective goes to Midland Christian. They learn that Ellis is aware of the assault and that Lee has documentation that she does not have access to. That's according to the court documents. This Monday is when everything comes to light. Lee tells law enforcement that he will not provide any documentation without a search warrant. So police show up to the school later that day to execute a search warrant. Now, the search finds that Lee, Ellis, Counts, McClendon, and Russell knew of the assault since January 21st. Lee hands over those documents, described as notes gathered from student interviews. None of those were conducted by authorities, by the way. Detectives also obtained emails that make clear something happened in the baseball locker room and that the school had a duty to report it. Court documents state several of the administrators refused to report that incident. Now, that brings us all to today, when all 5 of the faculty members were arrested for failure to report. This was around 11 o'clock today. A lot to go through. Now, these events also raise a big question about the future of the baseball team. Corey Mose is here to talk about their next steps. Corey, what do we know so far? You know, their season's about to begin.
Yeah, Tim, the season is right around the corner. They've actually been playing a bunch of preseason tournament games. And the thing is now, with the coaches in custody, what's next for the baseball team? And it seems like a lifetime ago, the Mustangs were parading the streets after winning a state title. Now, not even a year later, the team's in the dark about their future. After talking to multiple coaches from the school, they've canceled practice today and also backed out of an upcoming tournament. The school was supposed to have a meeting tonight about the program's future. That future was going to include new head coach Barry Russell, but now that's up in the air. The legendary coach won a state title back in 2001 and retired in 2018 after 34 years in the dugout. Until the job opening at Midland Christian became available, that was enough to get Coach Russell back to the diamond. But now we don't know if he's going to be back at the school. Once we find out that answer and more, we'll be sure to update you. Tatum.
Thanks, Corey. There's still so much to go through on this. Now, the charges against the school administrators and coaches are serious. They could have been charged with a misdemeanor, but instead they were charged with a felony. Now, if you work at a school, no matter what your job title is, you are required by Texas law to report any suspected abuse immediately. Now, to sum it all up, any school employee is required to report any suspected abuse or neglect immediately, but also no later than 48 hours after they suspect the abuse. School employees, they don't have to report to a supervisor or a coworker first. They can go directly to police. Also under the law, they cannot delegate or rely on someone else to report it either. Now, what makes this case even more serious is the accusation that the school officials tried to cover it up. Now, under normal circumstances, not reporting the suspected abuse under state law is considered a Class A misdemeanor. In this case, under state law, which you see here, if you intended to conceal it, that would then make it a state jail felony. While that is the lowest level of felonies in the state, it still means jail time if convicted. Again, there is a lot of information to sift through. We just threw a lot of information at you too. We've got a full breakdown of everything that you need to know on our website, newswest9.com.
Good evening, my good people. In sports, not every player is the MVP. The hardest part is just making the team. But for this 7th grader, that part was the most fulfilling.
Yeah, that's Timothy Bryant. His infectious smile tried out for the 7th grade basketball team, and he didn't make it. But that didn't stop Coach from giving Timmy a spot off the court.
You know, I got with Coach Kaufman, and we both decided it was a good idea to bring him on as our team manager.
I could not contain myself. I was about to... I'm a manager. Like, I've never gotten to play any game.
That may have been true until their final home game of the season, when Timmy was handed a jersey.
My mind was like, let's do this.
Well, I said, Tim, I don't know how today's game's gonna go. I don't know if you're gonna play for 20 minutes or if you're gonna play for 2 minutes. His response right away, witty as can be, is, Coach, it's gonna be about 2 minutes.
Even with little playing time, Timmy had his big moment.
I was determined to make it, and then I did.
Timmy's name was echoed throughout the gym full of people.
Timmy! Timmy! Timmy!
But little do they know how alone this kid has felt over the past couple of years.
My dad don't live with him. About 5 years ago, went off with another girl. Hurt my heart.
And your mom, where do you?
She was kind of addicted to like whiskey and weed and stuff like that.
Timmy rarely knew what he would eat or where he would sleep most nights until a stranger picked him up from school.
Tim's 5th grade year on the 3rd day of school, we got them through CPS.
I was like, usually my mom picks me up, but okay.
I did bribe him with food, and that worked like a charm. I still would, actually.
From that point on, Timmy experienced something he never felt: support.
My favorite part is just having someone that cares for me.
Did you not feel that before?
No, my mom really didn't give me that vibe.
But his circumstances didn't stop Timmy from trying. Whether it was football or basketball, he didn't quit, despite having his family quit on him. But his new family is giving him another chance.
He just needed the opportunity.
You don't think very often as an adult you'll learn from a kid, but all the time in education you're proved that you definitely do.
Timothy has taught me to appreciate some simple things in life.
The biggest impact he's had on me is just his positivity through it all.
I would tell him, stick with it. Life's gonna throw some curveballs. Just gotta get through it.
Man, life lessons from someone who's lived half the amount of life as me. That's crazy. Now, after his success in basketball, Timmy told me he has his eyes set on the track team next. Seems like nothing can stop this kid, Crystal.
Explosions, huge flames, and thick, heavy smoke. Viking pools in Midland County now gone. Take a look at this. Viking pools in Midland County engulfed in flames. Sounds of explosions filled the air, and thick black smoke could be seen for miles. All this only hundreds of feet away from truckers at the Pilot truck stop and an RV camp right off I-20 and FM 1788. While many stopped to gawk and take video and pictures, it wasn't long before they started taking off. Sheriff's deputies swooped in, then they were forced to leave.
This is the Midland County Sheriff's Office. To all residents and bystanders, please evacuate the area at this time.
I gotta get out of here right away, just in case.
Truckers, people in RVs and campers could not get out fast enough. Tonight, we start with breaking news just a few blocks away from the NewsWest 9 TV station. A massive fire you probably saw from the highway this evening. Tonight, it is a developing situation. But what we know is that Viking Pools off I-20 was the source of the blaze. It sits just west of the Pilot truck stop. Now, we've got Jonathan Polasic on scene to try to explain a little more about what's going on tonight. Jonathan, what have you learned?
Good evening, Crystal. Here's what we know so far about this fire. According to the fire marshal, Justin Bunch, he tells me that Viking Pools caught fire right around 7:45 earlier this evening. Now, crews from all over Midland and Ector County, they joined in to fight this fire and evacuate nearby businesses and an RV park. Now, so far, no injuries have been reported, but there are concerns about the smoke that's billowed up from this fire, even as the smoke has been pushed down to this point in time.
Our main concern right now is if the smoke continues, about 45 minutes from now, the Weather Service says the wind shift's going to shift south, and that may cover the interstate. And at 10 o'clock, it's going to get to about 15 to 20 miles an hour. So our main concern right now is the weather that's coming up. But looking behind me, it looks like they got a pretty good knockdown, so hopefully it won't be an issue.
Now, one other thing to note is that nobody was inside the business when the fire started. In fact, employees of the business were last there around 5 o'clock, and firefighters, well, they had to break the lock in order to get inside. Now, as of right now, we still don't know what the cause of the fire is. That's something that, fire crews are going to continue to try and figure out as they continue to work to put this fire out. And once we get an update on that, we'll be able to provide a few more details about that a little bit later on. Reporting live in Midland County, Jonathan Polasic, NewsWest 9.
Well, wind speed and direction is always an important factor when dealing with fire. And here's a look right now outside on our Premier Fence sky cam. You can still see that, Anthony.
Yeah, just a little bit earlier, about an hour ago, you saw quite a bit of smoke there on the sky cam. And the wind, like you said, super important. So let's go ahead and take a look at our wind gust tracker. And as we take a look right here, this is about an hour ago, 9 o'clock. The wind was coming in from the west, from west to east, and that's why the smoke was going from west to east. Now we're about to see a shift in that wind direction, just like this. As we go towards 11 o'clock, midnight tonight, that wind is going to go from south to north, and that's the new direction of where that smoke is going to go to. And firefighters may have to deal with that wind direction shift over the next hour or so.
For miles, all you see is green. In fact, you won't see any restaurants around here. Even gas stations are sparse. But once you see those 4 numbers, you'll know when you're there.
Not many people here, far more livestock than there are people.
Nestled in Guthrie, about 3 hours from the basin, the 4 Sixes Ranch spans over 300,000 acres, making this one of the largest ranches in the Lone Star State and way bigger than the town itself. If you've watched Yellowstone, this ranch will look familiar to you. And that's because some of the filming for the show was shot here.
It's certainly nothing that I ever expected I would be doing in my lifetime. Quarter horse is probably the most, there's more of those in the world than any other horse, okay?
Dr. Glenn Blodgett has worked here for 40 years, and he's been a veterinarian for 48. And he knows everything there is to know about horses, with an appreciation for the service they provide.
And I've always been connected with the livestock industry, and then really kind of channeled in mainly the horse and cattle industry after I graduated from veterinary school.
And now he's showing even more people the ropes after Yellowstone became a huge hit.
I think the show has probably brought interest from people that maybe didn't own a horse, that might want to own a horse. When they see the horses and see what they can do, it kind of stimulates an interest in the Western lifestyle.
I'm here to talk cattle. They don't belong to you. They don't belong to you either.
If you've never seen the show, the series centers around the Dutton family, who own the largest ranch in Montana called the Yellowstone. The family dives into drama with developers, Native Americans, and the national park. Well, Jimmy Herdstrom, one of the main characters, he's a troubled man who's later sent to the 4 Sixes Ranch in Texas from Montana so that he can stay out of trouble. That's where he learns what it means to be a true cowboy.
Who are you?
I'm Jimmy. I'm the new cowboy.
You're not a cowboy.
You know, we have a number of people just traveling through here and happen to be aware of it. Our tour request has dramatically been affected.
You Jimmy?
Yes, ma'am.
Open that for me.
And let's be real here. Reality will always be different than what you see on TV. However, in this case, some things remain the same.
All right, get ready.
Wait, ready for what?
Put this sleeve over his penis and hold it.
What?
Get used to it. We got 15 more to collect.
This is what the 4 Sixes Ranch is all about, and they've been doing this way before Yellowstone. This facility is known for breeding some of the most well-respected quarter horse stallions in the industry. They're used for the ranch, arena competitions, and racing.
It's really been a goal here since the inception to always have good horses. You know, we do embryo transfer here. We need recipient mares or surrogate mares for carrying those pregnancies.
But hold your horses, because you'll have to meet someone else who's familiar with the show.
So here we are in one of the stables where they house several horses. This right here is Six's Pick. Now, Six's Pick was actually bred and raised here, right? But if you wanted to see the real superstar, you'd have to come over here to this side. Here we have Bet He's a Cat, and if he looks a little familiar, that's because he's made a few camera appearances on the show on Yellowstone, right? Are you a celebrity? Yes? Yeah, he's a celebrity.
But he's the horse that Jimmy collected.
Because Yellowstone is deemed as America's most popular show, it's actually helped business in the small town. Not far down the road is where most of the town is, and the place that's getting a ton of business is the 4-6's Supply House. It's the ranch's general and hardware store, which still holds a lot of history.
It was originated and what it was used for, all the cowboys, there's nowhere within 30 miles of here that any of the cowboys could go get a snack or anything like that, or even like anything to work with. So hardware, we had all of that, and it's just kind of grown and grown over the years.
And since the show has become a huge hit, so has their sales. $5.
Some people were like, we didn't know this was a real ranch. We thought that Yellowstone, it was made up along with the show. And so when we get to tell people the history behind the ranch and to see how cool it is and their eyes light up, it is so fun. People always ask me, what's one of the coolest things you get to do with your job? And it is getting to meet the people. We have people from all over the United States come in. Even today we had people from Australia. But Yellowstone it's just made it grow into such an amazing thing and really has brought so much attention in great ways for the ranch.
What is it like being a Hollywood star? You didn't get any of the money?
But the main question that we're probably all wondering, is this the place to become a real cowboy?
Well, I mean, it would be, but it would be challenging if they didn't have any experience. Most of the working cowboys here, you know, they grew up where their parents were doing the same kind of thing. Not only in being a cowboy, staying here on a long-term basis, it's more challenging for them. It's not that some young person couldn't, you know, grow and develop into a cowboy, but it's going to be a challenging experience for them.
The one thing that remains true here and on Yellowstone, the 4-6's ranch knows how to live life the Western way. In Guthrie, Jolena Okazaki, NewsWest 9.
Hops, drink, hum. Turn this water into rum. Okay, well, it is Halloween, so we have a lot of spooky events coming up, and parents, a lot of places where you can take your kids for treats, not tricks. Wingardium Leviosa.
You're saying it's wrong. It's Leviosa, not Leviosa. Plus, we'll take a behind-the-scenes look at a creepy hotel in Texas. You may want to think twice before you book a room.
Halloween is always a time to be creative. We'll take a swing at some of your best costumes that you guys came up with this year.
And no need to scream about the weather. Temperatures are looking good for trick-or-treating. You're watching NewsWest 9 Sunrise.
We've weathered the storm, but the worst may be yet to come.
Millions of Texans have been without power for 4 to 5 days.
The most recent outage map shows upwards of 800 people still without power.
What happened this week to our fellow Texans is absolutely unacceptable and can never be replicated again.
Texas. Home of big energy. Nobody does it like we do. We're #1 in energy production, providing more than 1/5 of all domestically produced energy in the United States. And West Texas leads the way in oil and gas production.
In Texas is a just-in-time delivery system, meaning we are getting gas out of wells, we're processing it, putting it in pipelines, and sending it to where it's in use. If any part of that infrastructure is taken down, then the whole system can go down.
The Electric Reliability Council of Texas, ERCOT, is constantly maintaining the delicate balance of supply and demand. Sometimes we need more than we can produce, a hard lesson learned from the winter storm of February 2021.
So there are hundreds of power plants out there, and ERCOT kind of acts as an air traffic controller. They're telling which power plants to turn on and which power plants to turn off relative to how much load that we currently have, and load being the sum total of everyone using electricity kind of at that exact same instance. In electricity, you have to match supply and demand in real time, so for everybody who's consuming electricity, you have to be generating that electricity right at that exact same instance. But you only have so many power plants to go around.
Most of the country runs on two power grids, separated by the east and west. But Texas has been running and maintaining its own electrical grid since the 1930s. By keeping it entirely within the state, the federal government can't tell Texas how to run things.
Texas is a place of independent thinking, of sort of a pull yourself up by your bootstraps kind of place, and so we have suspicions of too much centralized power.
But little did they know back then that Lone Star spirit would be a big draw for Bitcoin.
We are an economically dynamic state with a diverse and talented workforce, great universities, incredible opportunities for expansion and business growth. This will just be another cog in the wheel that propels Texas to be an economic leader in the world.
Bitcoin is a form of cryptocurrency, money that only exists as digital files. There will only ever be 21 billion Bitcoins, and they have to be mined just like any other limited resource. You can think of it as virtual gold, but instead of a pickaxe, Bitcoin is mined with computers. There's no bank or central authority, but a peer-to-peer network of miners around the world. They're constantly using complex computations to verify every Bitcoin transaction in chronological order. Every verified transaction adds a block to the public ledger known as the blockchain. In return, miners are rewarded with new Bitcoin. But this mining process requires a lot of energy. Just one facility can use enough electricity to power a small town. Mining operations can be made up of hundreds or even thousands of computers, and as more miners jump in on the process, the need for energy grows. With our state's population expected to double by 2050, we're already wondering how our strained grid can keep up with demand. So what role do Bitcoin miners play in this Texas power puzzle? Enter West Texas, the land of cheap energy and the people who know how to find it.
Bitcoin miners are seeking out low-cost energy and stranded energy, whether it's renewables or natural gas or even flared gas.
I think they're starting in Texas because we have a unique situation in Texas where it's really easy to build new facilities like wind or solar farms or to connect to the grid. It's a very business-friendly state, and so I'm not surprised to see a lot of those facilities coming here.
I think that there's a significant opportunity in West Texas. The Permian Basin is a great setup for Bitcoin miners throughout the United States because of the access to affordable energy, not just on the grid, but also the access of natural gas because of all the infrastructure and all the development that has been invested over the years.
These flames light up the West Texas skies, and they've got the attention of Bitcoin miners from all over.
There's excess power throughout the Permian everywhere.
How an untapped resource is fueling their future.